And now I would like to introduce to you Leslie Hughes from punchmedia.ca, the day my online behavior changed forever.
It's pretty dramatic, right? And I didn't intentionally wear the colors that actually go with the conference, but the great branding, right? So I just wanted to, I'm Leslie Hughes, as you mentioned. I'm a wife, a mother, and I own a business called Punch Media. And so I help businesses and people learn how to use social media using Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. And one day I received this email last September from a man named Peter. And on the email it said, Leslie, this doesn't sound like you, but if it is you, I'm really quite surprised. And I looked a little further down the email. It was from a woman named Anne, and it said, a competitor of mine is trying to run a smear campaign against me. Could you rally to my rescue? So I clicked on the link, it went to her blog, and it said, amongst other things, Anne, you're nothing but a hack and a money-grubbing pig, signed Leslie Hughes. And there was my picture, and my name, and my email address. Horrified, absolutely horrified, to then see 40 people had responded to say, Leslie Hughes, what kind of a business owner are you? Do you kiss your mother with that mouth? What kind of a person are you? And I was horrified. In a million years, I never would have dreamed to do something so horrible or negative. And so what sort of happened next was really that one moment and that one time, that one person really changed the way that I was using on my online, like what I was tweeting about, because I started to get really paranoid. I thought, well, is this person a stalker? Are they going to show up at my house? I mean, how malicious could this person be, and what were his intentions? So I stopped I stopped checking in at Foursquare, and I stopped announcing where I was going on Twitter, and I just really became very, very conscious about the information that I was tweeting about. So what happened next was I sort of, did my own PR 101 crisis management. Was I wrote my own blog on my experience and what had happened, and that it wasn't me. And also I got in touch with the woman, Anne. Of course, I was devastated for her, because to hear that kind of information, for somebody to be so malicious and so negative, and it certainly wasn't me, that must have been hard for her as well. So I reached out to her, and we worked together, and she gave me the IP address of what had happened on her blog. Fortunately, I have a friend who works in the police department in Peel, and he told me to go into the police station with 403C of the criminal code, which is personation with intent. And things happened, it all sort of rolled out very well for me, that the police officer the detective who took the case used to work in IT as a civilian. So he understood the magnitude of what happened and actually got to work. And within a month, they did their due diligence and found out that it was just some random man that lives with his elderly mother in a town very close to where I live, who said that he did it for fun. Yeah, he did it for fun. And I'd never met him before, but I sort of had a very casual relationship with him on Twitter, because he'd sort of retweeted some of my information, had been following me a little bit. And again, it just sort of left that violated, I really, really felt violated. And as a mother and a woman with a small child, I really, as I mentioned, where do I go from here? How can I still use social media to do good things and not have it defeat me? So that's sort of the four things that I sort of just wanted to mention, that if this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And so I just caution you, as an individual, as a small business owner, have a PR crisis plan in place. If this can happen to anybody, you want to know how to respond quickly and positively, because I could have taken it in a whole different direction. That's just not my nature, but the other person wanted to go and confront him, and my husband, of course, wanted to kick his butt, and all these other sorts of things. But I think the way that I handled it, thankfully, the police did their due diligence, and they got to and the good guy won, thankfully. The man had to do community service, and he had to write an apology and a testimonial, which I'm not going to use. But as some of the other people that have been up here, just think before you tweet too. So I love that tweet. Info Sarah had said it once, we think before we speak, and we have to really think before we tweet. We have to think before we publish information. So that's about it. I don't know if we might have some time for questions, if anybody had any questions about this. Sure, if anybody wants.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, I have a mic.
I can't see any of you, but.
Okay, Anne, you have a question. Okay.
Have you been able to get back to your former feeling of comfort and to be able to be yourself with a greater degree, or maybe not totally?
To a certain extent, because the person wasn't, because he sort of did it as a joke, and the police officer reassured me that this was sort of a first-time offense, that it wasn't something that he wasn't. I was almost concerned for my physical safety and my son's safety. So no, I mean, I don't usually publish, and I've actually taken pictures of my son off Facebook, even though it was. I mean, that's the irony, is that I teach social media for a living, and that it should happen to a person who teaches this to other people. But it's just made me very, very conscious about what I'm publishing and to whom I'm publishing, because it is out there. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Lee? Here. Why don't you use the mic?
I had the pleasure of having you speak at a previous event that I hosted, and you mentioned that you no longer have your Twitter feed go through your LinkedIn.
Right.
What made you come with that decision?
Actually, it was Scott Stratton, if I can give Scott Stratton shout out. Before, I used to have my Twitter feed go, but it's the LinkedIn is just a different conversation. As you know, it was sort of mentioned before that Twitter is a water cooler, and so that's not, LinkedIn doesn't seem to have that same sort of engagement, same sort of conversation, the same content. The water cooler and the business just don't seem to mix very well. And as Scott had mentioned before, because I did hear him say that at Blistum, and I was like, really? It's just so much easier to have it auto-pushed. It just... Well, it isn't conversation when it is auto-forwarded or scheduled. So I'm on Team Scott Stratton for that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said you took down photos of your son from Facebook.
Pretty
Before
much.
that, were you accepting friends even if you didn't know them?
Never did.
You never did?
Never did. And
So
I was
is it
very
just
cautious.
creepy
Yeah.
in general to have pictures of your kid, you think?
Is it creepy?
Because really only your friends can see them.
Right.
And you're accepting your friends.
Yes.
Knowing them.
I guess I thought about it from the bigger perspective of also my son's about 4 years old, and what's life going to be for him when he turns 20 and he's out there looking for a job? And even though the information is sort of private to my friends, you can't really trust every single social media site that they're going to keep all your information private, and Facebook is probably the worst culprit for that.
Terrible. If I don't post a picture of my kid every 6 hours, my mother will call and think there's been some sort of tragedy, and that I need to post a new picture of Ruby to make sure that everything's good. And I've struggled with that, and I do only, people that are my Facebook friends are my real life friends.
Yeah.
And I've had, yeah, it's weird.
It's a fine balance, right, between being personal and being too personal, right? And so, as I say, we have to sort of think about who's receiving that information. And I read a Wall Street Journal article that was kind of interesting that said that kids nowadays may change their name once they get to into their 20s because of social media and some of the stuff that they may do that may haunt them, that when they're job hunting, when they're in their 20s or 30s, that they may have to change their name in order to avoid. Yeah.
Any other questions? No?
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks to the organizers. This is an amazing event. Thanks, Julia.
Yes.
Oh, we need a set change for Taylor.
No, we just need the easel up on stage. Okay, awesome. All right, Debbie, would you please come up?